Hello. Hello. Happy Monday. I am surrounded by cats.
It's not a game, it's a rage.
Oh no. My music started up again. Ah! Okay. Cat, you have to move. Okay. For some reason, my cats have both decided they need to be in my little enclosure with me. Typically, this enclosure is about not having cats because, the cats are always there. But today, this one's on my desk. There's another one on the back of my chair, and they don't like each other. So, uh, things could happen, you guys. Maybe you guys should leave. Thank you. Okay. Happy Monday, y'all. I hope you are well. Did everybody have a good weekend? Did you do anything fun? A few of you were at Stitch and Glitch with me and Jill on Saturday. And I think we had a couple of new folks that popped in, so that was really exciting. And oh Lord, these cats. um, so anywho, today we are getting back to Quiltcon. Still have lots more stuff to show. And I thought today we would take a look at Hillary Goodwin's work. Oh, no worries, Druid. Yeah. You didn't miss anything except for foolishness. So, you can always drop in for foolishness anytime. But I hope your meeting with your contractor was good, because I think that's probably good things for your living space, right? I'm hoping. So, Hillary Goodwin, her work, you've probably seen it. If you have looked at any modern quilt stuff in the past, say 8 to 10 years, you may have seen at least one of Hillary Goodwin's works. She's pretty popular. She's fairly well known in the modern quilt world, modern quilt guild. So I really like her work. There are some pieces that I'm just like, I want to just snatch that and run away with it. So I thought we would look at those. And I did not read the placards beyond the title and a date. I was kind of watching the dates as I was taking pictures, and I know a number of the quilts were 2016, so you've got definitely a 10-year retrospective of her work. So that's pretty cool. And I have some thoughts in my mind about how her work has changed, and we'll see if what I'm thinking is correct. It's kind of interesting. So, oh, that's good, Druid. I feel like when you have like a repair person or like a contract come and you're like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Please don't let it be different. Or like you take your car to the mechanic and you're like, surely it's just what I think this is, right? And yeah, it's good when they confirm what you thought versus surprising you with more. Anyway. So, and then I don't know how long it'll take us to look at the Hillary Goodwin stuff. I can be a little bit chatty and long-winded. But if we finish in time, there's several pages of American quilts. We need to get back to that. I feel like it's been ages since I picked up the book. Actually, I had to unearth it from a couple of other things I've had on my desk. I did my taxes this weekend, and I put some stuff there, and I was like, oh, I can't bury that. I can put away the tax paperwork at least. Anywho, all right, let's look at some cool stuff. Let's look at some quilts. So I think, let's see. Okay, so I'll read you the information about the quilts of Hillary Goodwin. Sell you $600 oranges. I hear ya. I know it's a struggle. So I think pretty much everything I already knew about Hillary Goodwin is in this little blurb. And you know what? I'm just gonna grab this magazine here because Oh boy, he's dumped out on the floor there. I do know there is a picture of her in the magazine. And this is her beside one of her quilts, which we will see. So that's Hillary Goodwin. Um, and what they say in here is exactly, I think, what we're gonna get to see. So I don't know that there's anything, um, any intel in here that is drastically different than what we're gonna read. So I just wanted to show you that one picture, and I want to say there's another picture of her in there, but you see her. She's a pretty young woman. Although, she may be older than I think she is. I know I'm older than people think I am. So let me read this about her. So this is the Quilts of Hillary Goodwin. Hillary Goodwin is a textile artist and quilter based in Northern California with roots in North Carolina and Washington State. Her work explores modern themes while paying homage to the rich tradition of quilting, dyeing, hand stitching, and leather work. Botanically dyed fabric, repurposed t shirts, grain sacks, as well as modern textiles all show up in her often hand quilted pieces. Well, they say often hand quilted, but I think that was early on. Early on, I don't think she hand quilted. I think hand quilting is a newer thing. And when I say newer, I mean like sometime after 2016, because some of these that are definitely machine quilted were like 2016. Um, her work has won prestigious awards and been exhibited internationally and has been featured in multiple books and magazines. One of her community quilts was acquired in 2021 by the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit and is part of their permanent collection. The Henry Ford Museum, I have never been there. It is on my bucket list to get there. They have lots of stuff. And they have lots of stuff that's relevant to textiles and quilt study. So it's one of those places to get to. They have quilts. And then there's a little piece about the art from the artist. She says, "Quilts hold the stories of our lives. Mine tell the story of my participation as an early fan and member of the modern quilt movement with the experimentation and bold style this group encourages." And I think that really does play out in her quilts. They pay tribute to other quilters with collaboration. They speak of my life as an ER doctor. So yes, this woman is an ER doctor. And you think, doctors are they're busy people. And so this next thing that she's going to say is why I think she's probably older than she looks, much like me. She says, "They speak of my life as an ER doctor who started her career at the onset of the HIV pandemic and worked on the front lines through the COVID pandemic. And lastly, they pay tribute to my experience as a member of the world during a tumultuous time who has tried to stand on the right side of history and find comfort one stitch at a time." Let's see, and I think that was everything. Yeah. So that's the quilts of Hillary Goodwin. So let us look at them. You flip over here, and I will read you from my phone so that we can just stay looking at the quilts. Okay. These go backwards. Okay. Um, so this is the first one. This one you could see no matter what stair or escalator you went down into the exhibit space and the vendor area. This quilt you could always see it faced like all of the escalators. And let's see, what year did she do this? So this is very recent. So this one was 2021. So this is one that I've been seeing for a little bit, but it's um I know I saw it on Instagram because I follow her on Instagram. But it was somewhere else. It was prominently displayed somewhere else, and I'm completely blanking on where that was now. Might be in the description, but obviously very graphic. The eyes. I think I mentioned this the other day. Eyes were trending at Quiltcon. There was several quilts utilizing eyes, like this sort of symbolic looking eye, this iconic looking eye. Um, I saw several people with like their quilt clothes had eyes on them. So eyes were trending. Although Hillary Goodwin made this one in 2021. I can say I made an eye quilt, which did not get into Quiltcon in like 2016, but we're not keeping track. But I really like this one because I do love the eye motif. I mean, you guys know I have a tattoo of an eye on my wrist. Also have one on my back. So the eye motif has always been something that's very attractive to me and kind of has personal meaning to me. So let's read what she says about this. And by the way, her Instagram handle is Entropy Always Wins, and that's spelled ENTROPY, always wins. All no spaces. Entropy always wins. It's actually the name of one of her quilts, but I think it's been her Instagram or her social media handle longer than that. So now think about this. This is an emergency room doctor who was on the front lines during the pandemic and has spent like early part of her career, I'm guessing when she was like in college and medical school, was during the AIDS crisis. And I'm thinking, she doesn't look like she's older than me. She looks like she's younger than me. So I don't know what Hillary Goodwin is doing to maintain her youth. Um, but I say keep doing it, sis. You look great. Um, I ask the question, and I do know just based on some of her other quilts, she has at least one child. Um, maybe more than one. I don't know, but how does a mother slash ER doctor, I mean, these are busy people, and especially during COVID. It just it I just have that like blah, you know, just baffled. Like how does she must have such a grip on her time, that she's able to make such amazing pieces of textile work and also have a career as an ER doctor because they are busy people. I suspect, and I feel like maybe I heard this at some point, but I can't really point down where I might have heard this, you know, anecdotal, I guess. But I feel like I saw somewhere where working on her quilts, potentially maybe actually doing some hand stitching, I'm not sure, but obviously like designing and thinking about her quilts was kind of something that would give a person who's under a lot of stress as an ER doctor kind of a reprieve. And this creative side is really good medicine, and I mean, I know a number of physicians um and one ER doctor is a man. But other doctors and nurses that I know that their creative outlets are very important to them to balance the stress of being in the medical field, and particularly at this time in our world. So I mean, I see that as certainly important, but I'm also just like, lady, when do you have time to make these? It's just, and they're so good. They're so wonderful. So anyway, this one is called 2020 Vision. I feel like I saw it in some like pandemic works. I feel like maybe that was where it was exhibited and that I saw it. And real quick, I'll zoom in here. You can see the quilting is 2020. Um, and looks like there's some other stuff in here. N95, like the N95 mask. Um, I'm not sure here. That it looks like a D. I'm not sure what that is. And then C. I think it says COVID in here. We've also got George Floyd in here. Um, his death was major news in 2020 as well. Um, so yeah, you've got some timeliness in here, things that are very like right in front of her as she's making this. Also, scrolling in here, you could see these are like a circular piece that it looks like she probably pieced this. And I don't know whether it's machine pieced or not. Obviously, we can't touch the quilts to really figure it out. But the quilting is hand quilted. Um, but she's pieced these in. Like, this is not appliqued, it's pieced in. Although I think perhaps the teardrops are appliqued. So it's interesting how she constructed this. And, the teardrops are added even after the border is added. So, okay. So let's read about it. 2020 vision. How does one commemorate a horrible year? 2020 was the year the COVID pandemic invaded our lives and became all too real for my husband and I, who are emergency medicine physicians. So, not only her, but also her husband. So, like, this is a family of busy people. While most people were isolating at home, we were facing a novel virus that we could not test for, had killed many medical colleagues overseas before reaching us, and without initial adequate PPE, personal protective equipment. 2020 was the year our children came home and did expensive Zoom college with our poor rural internet. So I don't know if she's living in Northern California at the time. But yeah, I know lots of people that had, you know, kids of all ages come home and do expensive Zoom school. It was a time as a nation. Sorry, it was a time as a nation. There was an awakening to the scourge of racism, exemplified by the death of George Floyd. There's a couple of typos in here. And it was the year my father, an experienced hiker and photographer, never returned from an adventure, succumbing to the power of Mother Nature. That's very sad. Throughout this crazy, horrible year, I could not cry. The quilt's pieced eyes and appliqued tears were my way of expressing my feelings. The quilting was done when I would come home from my shifts at the ER, and repetitive numbers meant to reflect the monotony of the times, sequestered at home and glued to our screens. 2020s were quilted, with other time-relevant words sprinkled in. At the end of hand quilting, in the right lower quadrant, I quilted 2021 with hope that we take the lessons of a hard year forward. The quilt won Best in Show at Quiltcon 2022, and the award money was donated to the nonprofit Save the Children. So yeah, it says machine pieced and hand quilted. So maybe these tiers are. What did she say? Yeah, so let's look at the lower right quadrant. Yep, there's 2021. So just a really strong graphical piece. And I guess, I'm thinking with it being Best in Show at Quiltcon, that's probably what I'm thinking of where I saw it last, or where I saw it a lot. All right. Look at this one. I don't know if I had seen this one before. So this one's called exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. That is its title. This one she made in 2025. So this one is fairly new. Exclamation points can express both distress and delight. For me, in our current political setting, these marks scream danger, and the colors are intentionally largely skin tones. This was a meaningful collaboration with quilting done by Shishari Kaburi. So it says this was machine pieced, and then it was machine quilted on a frame by Shishari Kaburi. I hope I'm pronouncing that person's name right. I'm not familiar with them, but a quilter. And let's look at the quilting. So yeah, look at this quilting. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. So we've got this kind of all over sort of like flowery, kind of sort of dense flowery motifs. And then we've got this all kinds of very graphic stuff going on in these exclamation points. Pretty cool. Very talented quilter that did this. So this is blowing a few of my my guesses about Hillary's work. I was kind of, I'll tell you, I kind of thought, knowing that 2020, that piece I knew had the hand quilting in it. And there's a number of other quilts that have the hand quilting. I was kind of in my mind thinking this machine quilted stuff was earlier in her work, and that the hand quilting is newer. But it seems like there's still a mix. And in this case, it's it's another person. She has gone to another quilter for the quilting, which you know, this is how some quilters get a lot of quilts done. Is they outsource some of the work. Either the quilting, they might use a long armor. The binding, I know lots of quilters don't love to do binding. I personally love to do binding. Anybody ever wants to send me their quilt, I will do the binding for you. um I really like this exclamation point. It's just graphically very cool. Yeah, I really love what she did here with the quilting. And this is one of those things like where I often wonder, like, when you collaborate with a long armor for something that is very bespoke. So not just I made this quilt for a loved one and I want it to have, edge to edge quilting, which is probably what most people send to the long armor, because the more intricate you get, the more long armor charges. So, but that aside, most of us don't get into this kind of like, very unique quilting throughout the quilt. So, I just really wonder if she what instructions she gave her quilter. If she already had ideas about what she wanted these exclamation points to look like, or she said just put a pattern in them. So very cool. I like how she did this kind of offset circles for the dots on the exclamation. Ooh, very cool. Okay. This one is pretty neat. There was a number of quilts like this. This utilizing smaller pieces to make a photograph. Um, and this one is called I Am My Father's Daughter. So I think this is probably a picture of her father. Um, but let me jump ahead really quickly so you can see. This is how it's constructed. Um, these raw edge um, neutral tones, and they look like a lot of the colors that were in that exclamation quilt, right? But she had said, using skin tones. You've got some chocolatey browns and some tans and some off-white here, off-white eggshell colors. So it's like she's using she probably has like, I just picture her having bolts of these colors. Maybe not, I don't know. Um, but when you see a quilter that uses, like, I have bolts of certain colors that I use a lot. So that's what I imagine. And I'm curious to know, if she plotted this out, like how she did this. Because I mean, look at these. They're they're not perfectly, you can see little bits in between, but these are pretty much on a grid. So I'm wondering if she like, like gridded out the fabric beforehand. Kind of curious what her process was. Hey Padma, glad you made it. So custom quilting is expensive, and then half the credit goes to the quilter. Absolutely. And I think with custom quilting, when particularly in shows and such, I think that there typically is this collaboration. It's kind of like looking at different patterns and looking at, geometrics and organics and all of these kind of different things, and discussing, what goes where. I know, for instance, Tula Pink and Angela Waters work closely together. Tula being a very famous fabric designer, but also quilter. Um, and she pieces her tops, and then Angela Waters quilts them. And Angela Waters is a well-known long armor who does like very, very intricate, bespoke custom work. So, yeah. So Druid's asking, I wonder if the long armor gets any credit at all in these quilts. So, that's okay. Yes, they're supposed to. So I will tell you this much. When you enter a quilt into a show such as Modern Quilt Guild, now if you're entering into like an art show, a little bit different. But when you're entering into a quilt show, you are required to name everybody who's involved. So for instance, if you're doing now to make, a pattern, like to take somebody's pattern and make a quilt, those quilts will not get into Quiltcon. Um, Now, but to make a pattern, to make a quilt of somebody else's pattern, you will get into local quilt shows, particularly if your guild is doing any sponsorship, or if you just have really impeccable craftsmanship. You can make somebody else's pattern, and but that person must be named. It must be like, I made this quilt, and the quilt is so and so's pattern. But then at QuiltCon specifically, and all of the big quilt shows, you have to say, is this a design of your own, or did you collaborate with someone else? So it's not necessarily a pattern, but perhaps you worked with somebody in drafting certain elements. Um, did you piece and applique this yourself? And did you work with anybody to quilt it? So yes, when you're talking about a quilt show, absolutely every person who is involved in the design and execution of the quilt should be named. And it's a problem if they're not. Just it means that whoever entered the quilt is holding out, and that's not cool. Now, in an art exhibit, this is where I think about, I mean, I enter my artwork lots. I entered a show last night. Um, and the show I entered last night asked for very little information. And I'm like, should you at least not ask me for an artist statement? like nothing. So if, in entering, and of course the quilt I entered, the piece I entered, it was all me. I designed it, I executed it. Nobody else was involved, so no big deal. But if I had, made a quilt that maybe I designed and pieced, but somebody else quilted, or I mean, there is the vice versa of that. I've quilted something that somebody else designed, but typically when the main person on the quilt is going to be the person that designed and executed the top, is typically like the main artist. But in this scenario I'm describing, like from submitting my own work, there was simply no place to tell them if another person had quilted it. So, that's one of those things where you really get into some kind of ethical gray areas when, it's going to be up to the person that submits the piece of artwork. If they are not explicitly asked, like you would be with QuiltCon, or, the other major, Quilt National, etc., they will specifically ask you. But if you're not asked, you need to tell, you need to say, I designed and executed the piecing of this, but somebody else quilted it. So I often wonder, some quilts that, will get into these kinds of shows where they are demanding every last detail, if those same quilts get into other shows without all of the information being, put out there, disclosed. So it's definitely it's definitely one of those things that you get into some moral and ethical issues in art making if you don't disclose. Okay, so this one is also 2025, and as she mentioned, I think in the 2020 quilt, she lost her father during the pandemic. So this, she says, and again, this is, I am my father's daughter. My father was a generous, smart, and loved man. He spent his career as a business executive, but inspired by my brother, once retired, dove into photography like it was a full-time job. We sadly lost him in a hiking accident in 2020. On the 5th anniversary of his passing, I used his high school photo to make a pixelated quilt in his honor. Each circle was hand cut. The time required to do so, a wonderful meditation on my dad. A picture quilt felt appropriate to eulogize someone who loved seeing the world through a camera lens. The image, though hard to understand up close, becomes more obvious from a distance. Sometimes love is like that. Love you, Dad. Oh my God. That makes me weepy. um, yeah, and this is, I've been working on a project. I've changed it over and over and over for 15 years. I don't know if the project will ever come to fruition, but it is kind of a pixelated sort of thing like this. Um, and it is very interesting that, the farther you get away from this, and I'm looking at this from the different screens, depending on how big or small you are and how far away you're pulled into this, how it resolves itself into a picture. And there were several of these types of quilts at Quiltcon. I'm thinking that I don't think we've looked at them yet. Um, yeah, I think that everything I showed you the other day were the ribbon winners, and I'm trying to think if there were. I don't think the other two were ribbon winners. Um, but there were I think two other quilts like this. Yeah. So yeah, he is a handsome dad. He was a handsome dad. There's just something so I don't know. It's just something so interesting about looking at your parents' young photos. Looking at them in in their high school photos or whatever. You think this is your parent before you. This is your parent with their whole life ahead of them. And in a case where you've lost a parent, to think of that interval between high school and their passing, that's their adult life. Yeah, a lot there, a lot of layers there. So yeah, I thought this one was very, very, very cool, very inspiring because I like this kind of work. Okay, this one is just fun. I mean, an orange background. Um, so she calls this one Inset Starburst, and this one's 2024. I kind of worked my way. I was sort of counterclockwise. So I think I bumped around a little bit. So, Padma, you're right. Up close, it's also really cool abstract art. Absolutely. And there's another piece she did that we will see, where you almost think for a minute like, oh, does this resolve into something? And it doesn't. It just happens to be lots of pieces. But it is also the same kind of feeling, like when you look up close, there's so many different things to see. Okay, so Inset Starburst. So these are just strips. I want to say, oh gosh, is this? I think I have some of this fabric. I want to say these are Denise Schmidt fabrics, I think. Um, but look how this comes together. There's this little tiny piece here, like a cornerstone that holds all these together. So she says this quilt was the cover of Quiltcon 2025 magazine. I don't think I have that. So I didn't recognize this quilt. It is a fun way to play with my inset strip technique using a block-based pattern, which is included in the magazine. My portion of the profits for this pattern were donated to the American Cancer Association. So this is another interesting thing. I mean, we've discovered some interesting things about her. Her husband's also a physician. Her prize winnings and her profits off of these quilts, that she's donating this money to charities. So, I think that tells you more about her as a person. I think she's a better person than I guess I can say. Saving lives and making quilts and donating all your proceeds. I mean, my gosh. Um, but yeah, this one's like very fun and very happy. Okay, this one. This one is called Migration Rally. And I have some, you know what? This is not Hillary Goodwin. I apologize. This is one of those ones that got caught in the middle. I don't know. I guess this was on the outside of the piece. I don't know. Well, anyway, let's look at this one for a minute. This is not Hillary Goodwin. Let me make sure. Let's see. No, I think this is just the wrong. Yes, Padma. Yeah, Hillary Goodwin. So every year, Quiltcon, and I don't know that they've been doing it since the beginning, but they do a retrospective of a major, well-known quilter. So next year will be Stephanie Scarsdale. She had a best in show back, it's probably 2018, maybe. Hillary Goodwin has also had a best in show. Jackie Gearing was she was a former. I think she was the former president of the Modern Quilt Guild. I think was her, unless she was. Yeah, I think she was president of the Modern Quilt Guild. Um, her work, she had a retrospective 2 years ago in Raleigh. I'm not sure who had a retrospective last year. In let's see, 20, I think it was 2016, was Carolyn Friedlander. So yeah, there's every year, and I think they choose the person by the end of the year for the following year. So like Stephanie Scarstall has been announced. So huh. I don't know. This is a Hillary Goodwin quilt. I don't know if this is Hillary Goodwin or not. I apologize, you guys, because the card I have for this is not her. And I'm realizing now some of these, I think, was just where they were in the, yeah, where they appeared within the. All right, we're going to see 3 quilts that are not Hillary Goodwin. So this one, I think I'm looking at the right thing. This is called Migration Rally. The rally pattern was a great way to explore color. In the designer's use of blues and a pop of yellow, I see a torchlight parade at dusk. By using silver blue, brownish green, and a pop of wine, okay, this is the right description, I see birds forming a migration in a dawn sky. The layout of improv blocks lets me orient the quilt so that the migrating birds can appear to be moving north, south, east, or west. And so this was by Linda Hamlin from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Again, it's called Migration Rally, and additional quilting was provided by Tisha Kavanaugh, who is her long armor. And the pattern is the Rally pattern by Melanie Tuazon. Tuazon? Not sure I'm pronouncing that right. I butcher people's last names terribly. So, Linda Hamlin. There was 3 quilts that snuck their way in. But you can see this has got some really gorgeous quilting in it. And I will tell you, because I was quickly snapping pictures of these and not paying attention, obviously, to the placards as I took them, I thought these were Hillary's quilts, and I was thinking to myself, because this had a date of 2016 on it, that she was doing this kind of work in 2016. So this is not true. I fooled myself. Oh, and there's that one pop. So it looks like she's saying, yeah, I see what she's saying. So these particular pieces, the way that they go together, you can orient them different ways so that you could have like this flock going one way or the other, up or down. Okay. This next one is also not Hillary Goodwin. I don't know how these got snuck in there. But still, very cool quilting in this one. Like, I'm pretty sure this one probably used extra batting, perhaps, to get this like really, really like high relief kind of pop in the quilting. So this one is called, so this is the 2016 Resource Pattern Exhibit. So that's what the last one was. So this is called Doodles. And that pattern, the design credit is called Note to Self by Karen Foster. So I'm guessing this was a Karen Foster pattern. So this says, so Jane Scheimer, so Doodles by Jane Scheimer of Sykesville, Maryland. She's not far from me. The note to self pattern is reminiscent of the practical use of Post-it notes found in the Kanban approach to software development. So if you have worked in software development, as I have, yes, Post-it notes and the Kanban, this definitely looks like a Kanban, which is just basically an organizational system. Rather than generating tasks, designs were collected, some purchased and others digitized personally. Once these designs were prepared, sketches were made on the quilt in a manner similar to drawing on a blank sheet of paper. So it looks like she dyed some of the fabric as well. And then it says machine quilted on a frame and machine pieced. It looks like she did her own quilting because there's no credit for that. But look at these, where she's gotten these. Like this one almost reminds me of like a spirograph. You remember the spirograph when we were kids? Kind of reminds me of. And, you know, any of these circular patterns, they just like boop. And I did get a close up of this, and you could see how far it pops off the surface. So very cool stuff. Okay, and I think this is the last one that snuck its way in. At least you're getting to see some of the other quilts I thought were cool. So this one's called Drones Over Ukraine, and this is part of the 2016 Resource Pattern exhibit. I didn't even realize I was in the middle of another exhibit. So this one, the design credit is Meeting of the Geese by Sylvia Schaefer was the design. So again, this one's called Drones Over Ukraine by by Veronica Moriarty of Mill Spring, North Carolina. And that must be in Western North Carolina because she's a member of the Western North Carolina Quilt Guild. And she says, I chose Sylvia Schaefer's Meeting of the Geese specifically so I could incorporate Anna Maria's Flying Geese fabric into the quilt. So let's scoot over here and see what she means. So this is the Flying Geese fabric. I chose the background colors based on her fabric, and when I pieced, I was struck by how much I was reminded of Ukraine's colors. Are the geese really geese, or are they drones in the sky over Ukraine looking for a target? Oh, the purple. So true. It says, I think this is cool. We all do. But if anyone around here, my aunt, for example, would think this looks undesirable to say the least, the purple one. Well, you know, the thing is, I mean, these modern quilts in general are often not, you know, they might be sized for a bed, but not really. You know, they might be big enough, but they don't fit the bed properly. So they're not, you know, nobody's thinking of king size, queen size, full size, etc. while they're making these quilts. And there are elements of these quilts that simply, even if you did use them as a bed quilt, they would not visually act the same way. So, you know, that these quilts were really just made to be hung and looked at. And I think that is why they are sometimes not appreciated by some quilters, because some quilters, it's, you know, their vision is on the bed and, you know, not necessarily all of these symbolic elements. There would be a look on the face such as when I present vegetarian food, not in their realm of fare. So, needless to say, if Druid shows up with a tofurkey in one of these quilts, she's going to be out on her butt. Oh my gosh, girl, you cracked me up. But yeah, and so this is hand-dyed fabric, I believe. So you can see you know, it's kind of modeled. She must have used some, you know, some type of technique that, you know, gave different saturations of color. And then how she used these little tiny sliver of fabric around the geese. And again, that this is Anna Maria Horner's Flying Geese fabric. You see that better in this picture. I didn't even realize, you know, when I took the picture that these were like flying geese out of Flying Geese fabric. That's pretty cool. Okay, this is definitely a Hillary Goodwin. So, you know, a little side trip. Okay, so this one is called the Baptist Fan Redux. So, obviously, Baptist fan here is usually a quilting design. For a while, I would hear about elbow quilting, and I'm like, what on earth are these people talking about elbow quilting? Well, it's the idea of you can quickly draw your quilting pattern if you anchor your elbow and then do this arc. when your elbow's anchored, you get this nice clean arc. And so then you can measure from there to make your the fan shape. Um, I do know that my great grandmother, I think a Baptist fan was the only quilting that she designed she did. That's what my mom told me. So I would suspect she probably was using the elbow, but they called it Baptist fan in their community. So I'm not sure where elbow quilting comes from, but I mean, that's essentially what it is. So, using your elbow to make or your arm anchored at the elbow. It doesn't have to be as radical as tofurkey. Sauteed squash. You know what? One of the most delicious things in the world is a squash and onion pie with lots of cheese in it. And I think anybody who can't accept that as a delicious vegetable, I realize you're just talking about sauteed squash, but I feel sorry for people who can't appreciate the wonders of squash when it is cooked and lovingly paired with onions and cheese. Um, so this is very interesting what she's done here. Um, you know, it, as each of these are almost like jelly roll strips. I'm sure that's not what they are, but almost like jelly roll strips. And as she gets to these different um, intersections, she's changing the color of her Baptist fans. And in some cases, they're obliterated by these central pieces. So this is let's see. Da, 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 da. Okay, so these are a log cabin construction. So you can see starting here, here, and that. Let's see, there. That, yeah, then that, and then that. Yeah, so it's like kind of going backwards, but yeah, and then you've got what's happening here with the Baptist fans. I have to be honest, whenever I see this, um, I always think of Wi-Fi. In fact, I could see it on my computer now. You turn those up so that the curves are straight up. It's the Wi-Fi signal, right? Padma says, I've heard that too, the elbow thing, but wouldn't that mean that your arcs are the length of your forearm and usually they're okay? So so yeah, what you're doing, you're not creating all of the arcs that way. You're starting your arc. You're starting an arc with your, and like whatever, chalk or whatever. So you start the arc. I think it's probably more often like this. Start the arc. You've got that drawn in, and then based on your blocks or whatever your design is, then you can use just a ruler then to measure from there. So yeah, there's all these different ways that quilters would achieve what they do. My favorite one is using the plumb bob. And my dad always had one because he was a blue collar worker, but you're basically, it's a chalk covered string that you'd suspend and anchor it, and then you snap it, and it's giving you straight lines, like on a wall or drywall or something. But they at times did this with their quilts too. And you don't necessarily have to have it hanging. You can stretch it across something and then snap it. So there's all these different techniques that they use just to kind of get that first line, make sure that like that first line is square, and then you can use a ruler or some other straight edge or curved edge to then get the rest of your units based off of that first that first squared up edge. So I think that's kind of what they were doing, right? Just getting that first line in. So what I like about her quilting here is that it's like plaid. It goes like they're closer together and then they're farther apart. Let's read about it. I've said many things. Let's read about it. So again, Baptist Fan Redux. We're back with Hillary Goodwin. She says, this quilt was a play with layers, transparency. Okay, so that's what's going on here, this transparency, and traditional designs. In this piece, some folks see Baptist fans, some see Wi-Fi symbols, and some others see rainbows. Like the layers inherent to the piece, I embrace all interpretations. So these pieces, it appears, at least these little chunks up here, it's probably were appliqued because it says there's hand applique in here. So it's entirely possible that some are, or maybe I'm guessing it's just probably some of these pieces were appliqued and others were pieced in. So this one's made in 2021. Okay, the next one. I love stripes. You could do such interesting things with stripes. Um, I think I still have upstairs on my bedside table. Um, I don't even I don't even remember what issue, what magazine it is. But I've had it open literally for years now. um, oh, I'll see you later, Padma. Say hi to Carolyn. So Padma's taking a class with one of my heroes, Carolyn Gibson. She is a British quilter, and absolutely adore her. So anyway, I had this magazine open in between stacks of books, and every now and then I'll pull it out and look at it, and it is stars. So like Lemoyne star, or an Ohio star made out of stripes, and the orientation of the stripes does interesting things with different types of stars. So with an Ohio star, um, it just is kind of directional. When you get a Lemoyne star, you can really get these kind of like eye scrambling optical illusions and stuff. So um, that's kind of what this reminded me of. And anytime you get these like really tiny stripes, you get that like kind of like it's almost like a shimmering movement, with your eyeballs. And it's really strong evidence where the miters are, like where the corners come together on each of these. Very interesting, very cool stuff. And it just gives you all kinds of optical illusions. Like this one, they're almost like portals, right? They kind of give you that like walking down like a eye scrambling, right? This one, it's almost like it's kind of jutting off to one side. This one's like more straight on. Yeah. Let's see. I don't remember what this one is called. So this one's called Dark Paths in American Denim. So here's a better close up. And you can really see like this is definitely a heavier. This is like railroad stripe, like denim, I think. Not sure about this wider stripe, but I think these really narrow stripes and then the pieces in the middle are denim, heavier fabric. This may or may not be denim. And you know what? Yeah, this is also a twill weave. Looks like it's denim. Yeah. Okay, let's see what she has to say about this. So, dark paths in American denim. Extreme money plus extreme politics can lead to some dark places. Oh, don't we know it, right? Using a technique I called tethered Y seams. So, these are Y seams. There's no way to piece all that in there without, you do some of the piecing and you have to stop to do the rest of the piecing. I pieced rectangles with stripes to show depth. It is meaningfully bound with recycled, gold-painted leather, the painting of which started wearing off the more I worked with it. The dark centers, if you look closely, show some light sparks for hope. Some light sparks. I'm wondering if she's just meaning the stitches, or if is there there's something else in here. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I did get a picture of the edges here, so you could see this leather. Definitely was still very sparkly, but I can see what she means, that as she worked with it, it kind of like it starts to rub off. And yeah, I'm trying to see. I mean, these just look like stitches. There could be something I'm missing here that I just didn't see because I didn't read the placard. Hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe she means just it's the white quilting threads within those when you look closely. Because I don't see like, yeah, I don't see anything added in there unexpectedly. Part of the problem with discovering along with you guys is obviously I miss things sometimes, such as not even realizing that I didn't have Hillary's. All of these quilts were not Hillary's. So this one was made in 2018. So this is a pre-pandemic piece. And you start to think like what is on her mind? Um, as she's making these, what's happening in the world? She's obviously in many cases responding to what's going on in the world around her. And I'm sure as an emergency room doctor, you see all kinds of things. Okay, this one is called 5/325. So here's what she says. And I don't know if this is 5/325 or if it's 5/ I don't know if it's a fraction or not. We'll see. 5/325 to most is a series of unimportant numbers, but to me it represents the most common form of hydrocodone acetaminophen I prescribe. Interesting. Okay. So I'm guessing it's 5 milligrams of hydrocodone, 325 milligrams of acetaminophen, perhaps. For many, it spells important pain relief, but for some others, it can spell the beginning or part of an addiction. With this piece, I supersized the numbers, cut and mixed them up, and constructed them back together to describe the mixed blessings of 5/325. Plus signs are quilted in the light parts and minus signs in the dark parts to further emphasize the coexistent benefits and dangers. The dark blue fabric was hand dyed for me for this project by Kim Eichler Messmer. And this was made in 2015. So this is 11 years ago. But think about the opioid epidemic. This is what she's talking about. And you could see the plus signs and then her hand quilting around them. And then here in the dark, hopefully you can see it. There's these negatives. Very interesting. Yeah, I wondered about this and I wondered what it was when I saw. I was like, 5/325. But now we know. That's pretty, that's pretty heavy, and gosh, I wonder, knowing that opioids are a godsend for some people, because of injury and pain management. Um, but for certain people, they do lead to addiction. And, I can't even imagine as a doctor, and especially in emergency room, because you see people coming in like from car accidents and gunshot wounds and, you know, very immediate, illness. This isn't, typically not things that like, oh, I've had this thing for a long time, but rather this thing suddenly happened to me. Or sudden onset of something. And painkillers become important. So this is one of my favorites. I just like this one graphically. I think it is very cool. She calls it pickup sticks. And she has another one that's kind of maybe the same techniques, but it's got a different title. So this one's 2019, so also pre-pandemic. And she says, this was the first quilt I made using an inset strip technique I came up with while experimenting. I won first prize in the piecing category at Quiltcon 2020. So this one is not hand quilted. This one is quilted on a machine. But you can see, and it quilted on a domestic machine, it says. So you can see she's got all of this like really tight matchstick quilting, but it's going in different directions. And what I think is amazing, honestly, is, I mean, you can't even see where she stops and starts here other than the seam line. I know that's something that I've struggled with is when you have to stop at a seam line, it sometimes is obvious. And she's done a really nice job of not showing that at all. Very nice. And I wonder if these might be hand dyed fabrics as well. It doesn't say. 'Cause I feel like I know there's light here. Some of this you see, this is the light that's coming from the convention center, but I think right here you've got a change in shade, and I don't know if it's maybe color, like the dye lot on the fabric maybe. Um, it's not a big deal. It's just I noticed it. But anyway, I really like this one. It's just I think it's really well, you know, well designed. This one, let's see. This one's called Pentagon Improv. This one's 2025, so this one's recent. But this is hand quilted. And this says, improv to me is exciting and therapeutic. This piece started using equally sized pentagons, adding to each side and combining them all together to make a sea of pentagon shapes. My hand quilting echoes the shapes with pentagons stitched throughout. So it sounds like what she did is all of these pentagons are the same, but it's how she adds these radiating pieces from the pentagon. You know, they're all very wonky, they're not the same. So it creates this, I know it almost looks to me like a low relief, like low poly is kind of often what they call this optical look. But it reminds me of like a map, with elevations and such. It's like all these things popping up. And you can see that her stitching are pentagons with this little um, really elongated diamond shape, because pentagons don't go together like hexagons. You end up with that additional shape in there that you have to account for. Very, very cool. Um, this was I'm terribly unmathematic, right? But I do remember um, kind of exploring things like this when I took geometry in high school, and I aced geometry. Like I don't think I ever got a grade below a B in geometry, whereas I barely, like, I got 1 point above an F so that I could pass algebra. Um, so geometry, I mean, I guess maybe I was meant to be a quilter because geometry makes sense to me. It's spatial relations make sense to me. But this like reminds me of sometimes when we would be able to do, some crazy stuff with geometrics. And this is what this reminds me of. And Robin says she really likes it. I like this one too. It kind of reminds, I don't know, it reminds me of like spring or summer or something. It's just, the bright colors. Okay, this one. This is the one she calls Entropy Always Wins. And again, you remember Entropy Always Wins is the name of her handle on Instagram. This one was made in 2016. And this is what she says. My social media byline is Entropy Always Wins. On face value, that sentiment can seem depressing, but it signifies that our lives and these things we spend many hours on are not everlasting. The finite nature of them, to me, makes them all the more beautiful. Knowing that I strive to live a life of beauty and to live a life making things of beauty. Embracing this theme, I made this modified tumbling blocks pattern quilt for my daughter. Okay, so she's got at least 2 kids. She's got a daughter and a son. Using some umbrella prints fabrics I won during a competition using their scraps. So yeah, you see the tumbling blocks, the baby blocks here. But then you see the pieces kind of floating away. Um, and to me, her sentiment of entropy always wins. Um, I mean, yeah, you can look at it as like this sad, like, chaos is always going to prevail, or things are always going to, decline or fall apart, or, um, just come apart, like that. Anything, organic things, they always decline, they disassemble. But I also like the idea of, I mean, she's saying that this makes these things all the more beautiful. And I think it's that concept of like memento mori. Um, and today we don't have the same sort of relationship with death that we had, say, in the 19th century and before. Um, Really kind of important idea that was sort of constantly driven into people's heads, I guess. At least in the 19th, 18th, 17th centuries, eras that I've studied, they had jewelry, and at funerals was kind of this idea of like, you too are going to die. You too, are not going to be here forever. You are not immortal. Um, and it's one of those things. Like, I guess it's kind of, is it a glass half full, glass half empty? Memento mori. You're gonna die too. Then make the most of today, right? That's the positive in it. Um, they always say, like, the only thing you can count on, death and taxes, right? It's kind of that idea, and it is. I like the idea of what she says. It's making things more. You appreciate the things more, knowing that they are not there forever. And I think that that's kind of a good thing to have in the back of your mind, with a positive spin on it. I mean, it's not great to walk around with that glass half empty attitude, but I like the way she thinks. All right. And this fabric is very cool, by the way. I really like this little flowered print, and then this one with the bigger flower print. It's a really cool fabrics. Oh, I had an oh yeah, look how subtle this piece is. You almost don't see it when you're backed away from it, except for just that little bit of flower. Okay. This one's called Molly's Windows, and this one's from 2016. Ah, okay. So 2016, Quiltcon, and I was there. I was at the 2016 Quiltcon, I think. Yeah, I definitely was there. Trying to think if that was Savannah. I think that was Savannah. So she says, at QuiltCon 2016, I saw the amazing work of Molly Upton in a special quilt exhibit. This piece was inspired by her work, as well as the windows of a building I saw in San Francisco that same year. And so machine pieced and quilted on a domestic machine, 2016. So um, these here in the center really do remind me of Molly Upton's work. She kind of worked with sort of strips. Um, she died by suicide in her late 20s, I think. And that was in the late 70s, I believe. Um, so yeah, she's one of those people that it's so sad that she's gone, and you often wonder, what would her work have looked like today if she had lived. But this kind of reminds me of that striped piece she's doing, where she's anchoring these Y seams to these little pieces in the middle, and you've got that sort of optical illusion of like a tallway or a tunnel for some of these. And then the way that the quilting goes out and like rays out to the sides, kind of anchors this centerpiece. Otherwise it kind of would just be floating in the middle. We'll have to look at Molly Upton's work sometime. I remember, I think way back on Quilt Nerd. Mary did, I think, some Molly Upton, a look at Molly Upton stuff. Now this one's interesting. So very simple. It is hard to make something this simple. The measuring and whatnot. I mean, you can see, where these like blocks are, these very large blocks. This one is called Afternoon Delight. This one was made in 2020. And she says, combined modern and traditional motifs is a theme I adore exploring in quilt form. So yeah, so the Baptist fans, but these simple rectangles and these, that's very modern. It's very painterly, like Rothko. Now, even though there's no gradation in the fabric, those lines are very like, it just speaks Rothko to me. Minimalist piece lines and soft hand-quilted Baptist fans dance together in this piece. And this is one where it says machine pieced and then machine quilted on a frame by Tia Curtis. So she did not do the quilting in this one. So this was, it is hand quilted, but it was hand quilted by someone else. But this, yeah, really, really gorgeous piece. This is definitely one I would have snatched off the wall and run away with if I could. I think I have a detailed here too. Yeah, a detail of how that little white sliver is put in there. I mean, you can see, how it's in there, and that's just another seam line of that mustard colored fabric. Okay, this I know is a quilt for her son. And it's called N is for Nathan. This was made in 2018. And it says, N is for my son, Nathan, who I made this for on the event of his high school graduation. Improvisationally pieced ends using new and repurposed fabrics. And, this just looks like a boy's quilt, you know? It is so very cool to look at, but you look in here at the fabrics. I mean, you've got all of these plaids, very masculine. There's this really fun fabric here. They kind of look like gears or, eclectic circly things. Got these big polka dots. But yeah, this idea of the N. And I suspect the way she was doing this, I mean, there's a bunch of different classes that teach these kind of inset slashed pieces, but I think it's like essentially you take a rectangle, you slash it diagonally, and and you insert this other piece. So you have these two piece lines here, and then you using that middle fabric on either end, and then you get the N. But she's done this like improv style, so they, you slash the piece, and you could do all kinds of different things with scale. These almost look like H's down here, just the way they're put together. Oh, and look, there's this different colorway of that black fabric. That's cool. I'm just seeing that. And I think it's a lot of the way that she uses pattern and color. She's very thoughtful about how it's placed. And that is where I think you can like win or lose. It kind of makes and breaks the look of a piece depending on how you put it together. So like if all of the blue, all these different blue patterns had been, sequestered down in one corner, it could look very different. If there maybe was no red in here, look very, very different. So yeah, I think that just the way that she balances, she's got a really great eye for design. In addition to I think she's a very good quilter. And here you can see that It's hand quilted, and much like I think, let's see, what other piece was that? I think it was that one of those Baptist fan pieces where the quilting is almost this kind of plaidish quilting, where the lines aren't spaced exactly. It's not a grid. It's more of this plaid sort of grid. I'm sure there's a better name for it than that, but I don't know. That's just what I think of. Okay, this one. This one's called Blobberella 2.0. Yes, there is another Blobberello that we will see. This one was 2023. And I mean, look at this. This has got some really dense quilting in it. But it's interesting when you back away from this one. My first inclination when I looked at this from a distance is that these were plaid fabrics. They've got like a plaid fabric with a very large blue like background, and then you've got like these green and gold and white sort of plaid. I think my husband has a shirt like that. But then once you get up close, I'm like, wow, this is not plaid at all. This is just how she's pieced these and then cut these blobs out. So she says, blobs make me happy, as do improv stripes. Both of them are in here. This quilt is a celebration of improvisation, both front and back, and part of my Blobberella series, adding small components of improv into odd-shaped applique circles. So this is machine pieced, hand appliqued, and quilted on a domestic machine. So quilted on a domestic machine, y'all. Hey, Kenny. It's good to see you. We're looking at Hillary Goodwin's quilts that were at Quiltcon. So quilted on a domestic machine, you guys. This is hard to do. It's hard to do. Those little pebbles are very difficult on a domestic machine, I can tell you. And this is not a small quilt. The sizes are not on here, but I mean, this is probably, I'd say 60 or 70 inches, give or take. So yeah, major kudos to somebody that can do this kind of stuff on a domestic machine. And when I say domestic machine, this means not a long arm. This means like the sewing machine that probably most of us own. Now, she might have one with a very deep throat. Oh, that sounds dirty, but the throat space of your machine is the distance from the needle to like where the mechanics of the machine are. It was, you know, if you have like a big space there, as I have I have an industrial machine with a really big space, so that one would be good. Um, but if you have a small, like I have a small sewing machine that I use for a lot of my like just quick sewing. The throat space is only like a big. It's only a few inches because it's a very small machine. There's no way I could wrestle even a small wall hanging through there to do this kind of quilting. So just the quilters that manage this, I don't know how they do it, but it is amazing. It is so good. It's a craftsmanship I will probably never, I will never master. Um, yeah, it was in Raleigh. Yep. So yeah. So next year, by the way, Quilcon will be in Atlanta. And I think I mentioned this the other day. I think it's hard for them to find just the right convention centers, because some convention centers, they may or may not want, um, Quilcon's an odd sized group. Um, it's not small, but it's not like the boat and car shows either. So I really like this one. I like her Blobberella series. You can do quilting on a baby size, but a bed size, no thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think of some of the quilts that I've rustled through a domestic machine. And again, like, I mean, I have an industrial that has a, pretty large space there in the harp. Um, and it's still difficult. You have to keep it like wound up to push it through there, and to do any kind of like, free motion effects like those little pebbles. Whew, it's something else. Here's a close up of the. I like this here. Look how she's really put this like, it almost looks woven through here. This one is obviously like she's done a square spiral. Amazing. Blobberella 2.0. We will see other Blobberella in a moment. This one, oh, the colors I love on this one. These are my favorite colors. Pink and orange and purple. Okay, this one she calls Golden Hour. This has got a very short description. It's just the techniques. She doesn't talk about this one otherwise. Just machine pieced and quilted on a domestic machine. Made in 2018. So, so this kind of quilting on a domestic machine is not, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not quite as backbreaking and impossible feeling as to like all of that other work, that kind of, custom bespoke looking stuff. This one, you kind of start with, a series of spaced out lines, and then you keep just splitting the space in between. And obviously she would have quilted it sideways, to do that. But what a fun quilt. And, again, it's this sort of that transparency kind of effect. And I think I mentioned Yvonne Fuchs, quilting jet girl. I think she's literally a rocket scientist. She teaches, or she used to teach classes in that idea of like these overlapping pieces. See, Kenny says, I feel more confident about the irregular lines in this one versus trying to do geometric lines, right? But still, even with this, and I mean, again, this is not a small quilt. It's not a bed sized, but it's not small. It's, again, it's probably, I would say maybe 42 by 60 something, maybe. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. But yeah, to get those lines, and I mean, that's even though it's just, lines, straight lines, this is still lengthy amount of quilting that has to go into that. And it is still not easy. Now you see that like they're not perfect. There's spots where they're like a little slubby looking. But that's just the nature of this kind of quilting. So yeah, I really liked this one. Another one I would snatch off the wall and run away with if I could. Look at this one. So this one reminded me a lot of, what we often see, the community quilts, because the community quilts always have like a very limited color palette. So she's used this limited color palette of blue and orange, and it looks like there's a little bit of like gray and black in here, but I mean, it's essentially they're opposites on the color wheel, and she's using these gradiated colors of this turquoisey blue, and so it plays off of the orange. It's very well designed. It seems to me she probably worked on these blocks independently, and then maybe at some point kind of put them together to decide what works. Yeah, it's just cheerful, happy. Yes, you guys. Based on the fact that she does look at some difficult topics in her quilts. This one is very, very fun. So this is so made in 2016. This is a community quilt. So what she says here, being in the improvisational quilting group Be Social, so that's BEE as in quilting bee, and social SEWCIAL. So being in this group Be Social was transformational in my journey as a quilt maker. For this group quilt, I asked my bee mates to contribute blocks that represented the concept of layers. Reinforcing this theme, I quilted strata like irregular lines that wander across the quilt. And then she's got the names of the other people. So, machine pieced by the Bee Social Group, Stephanie Royley, Leanne Chaley, Marcy Debitaz, Felicity Ronigan, Karen Foster, Debbie Jeske, M.R. Charbonneau, Ann Sullivan, Carrie, oh boy, Wojciechowski, and then Hillary Goodwin. So sorry for all of those ladies in the Bee Social Group that I messed up your names. But that's why it gave me those vibes. It was a community, it was a group quilt. So that, oh gosh, look at what she did with these lines and how they come together so interestingly. Um, yeah, just, I mean, she's got these spots where these lines come together, but they're not like typically when I see this, that's telling me like, oh, there are these two shapes that have sort of been echo quilted, but not really. I mean, you see this happen across the quilt, but there's no major indication of like one super big shape. I think it looks like she's done these sort of irregular lines and then the way they end up coming together like that. Very interesting. But what a fun quilt. Um, and I know Padma left, but this is kind of what we were talking about, like when does the long armor get mentioned? In this case, obviously Hillary quilted it herself, but this is a case where it is her quilt. She finished it, but these other people contributed to it, so their names are on the exhibit. Oh, and by the way, it's called Fire and Ice, if I didn't mention that. Oh, this one I love. And of course, you guys, I know I love a schoolhouse. I know I've probably said it a bunch of times. But these are just they're schoolhouses that are superimposed onto log cabins. So, um, it's I'm sitting here like going like trying to trace the log cabin and it's interrupted by the schoolhouse, right? And you're looking at the schoolhouse and you realize it's interrupting a log cabin. Like it's so cool how she did this. And again, you could see Baptist fan quilting. She likes that Baptist fan. Lady after my own heart, I'd say. And these are the close-ups. So it looks she's used some different types of like sacks. Um quick dissolving. That seems like some type of, I'm not sure. So this is what she says. This one's called Log Cabin Schoolhouse number 2. Log Cabin Schoolhouse number 2. Let me go back to the picture of it. So this was made in 2025, so this is fairly new. And she says, I suspect each of us can think of a teacher that has positively impacted us along the way. Educators are among my heroes, and to honor them, I designed a quilt shown at Quiltcon 2023. The first version was acquired by a foundation, and the $10,000 raised was donated to the charity Donors Choose to help public school teachers and students across the country. This is the third instance where she's described a significant donation based on a quilt or a pattern. This second iteration is made with beloved oak shot cottons and vintage feed and flour sacks. So I guess quick dissolving would be the flour sack. This says machine pieced and hand quilted in a traditional frame. So just lovely. Oh, I love this so much. And I'm just so fascinated by the fact that, all of these wonderful opportunities she's had that have resulted in prize money or resulted in, earnings from patterns and such. Um, that she's donated all of this money. So yeah, so you can see the print. This is the type of print that back in the day they worked very hard to get rid of. Um, and I love the fact that, of quote unquote white flour sacks and feed sacks, they are such different tones here. It's a very, very successful quilt, in my opinion. Okay, this one is called The Egg. And this one's 2016. And she says this piece plays with free-form improvisational piecing and the elaborate and detailed quilting by Rachel Dorr, a fun collaboration. And I believe Rachel Dorr, I mentioned the other day, she quilted one of the winning pieces. Um, and it's Rachel, as is often spelled Rachel. And her last name is Dorr, Dorr. So she must be pretty well known um, quilter. And this was made in 2016. And this is one of the ones I looked at and thinking that, now most of her work is hand quilted, but in 2016, she collaborated with Rachel Dorr um, in this really dense, machine quilting. So, I mean, you look at this. This is very, very dense in here, like to the point it just disappears. And then you have all these wonderful designs. I really like these, the way she's done this. And this, I honestly can't tell, and I don't remember if this is the quilting that made this or if this is the fabric. I don't remember. Um, but I mean, just the texture that she got in here, and that's why, I mean, I have a lot of, and I guess I'm sometimes really dazzled by long armors that, well, and I mean even domestic machine people, but this is surely long arm because of the like perfection in this. Um, how they do this. They use rulers. They have, they're well practiced. They have various techniques, but still knowing, even seeing it done, and you're like, oh, well, I mean, they get that hard line because they use a ruler. It's still not easy. If you've never tried anything with the free motion needle going, um, it's not easy because unless you're using a fully automated long arm that where you're basically computer quilt from side to side, just go do it and you hands off and it does its own thing. Anytime you're controlling it, so controlling a long arm or a frame, or under your domestic machine, you have to, like, there's a sense of control, like just the stitch length that you have to worry about, because without either your feed dogs are lowered, if you're using a domestic machine, or you don't have feed dogs and you've just got this needle that doesn't have a presser foot. It's usually got like a spring or just a little kind of a little hoop shaped thing that comes down as like the presser foot, but it's not really a presser foot because your feed dogs are lowered or you don't have them in the case of a long arm. Um, I mean, aside from doing this beautiful patterning, you got to worry about your stitch length too. Now I have a Grace frame with an industrial machine on it that has a stitch regulator, but you can still override the stitch regulator by just being like spastic. If you like move it too fast, you get this like big jump, big long stitch, or you don't move it fast enough, you got these teeny tiny little like horrible stitches. It's just, this takes so much practice. Even if you are using, quote unquote shortcuts like rulers, it is still a lot of work and a lot of experience that goes into this. So, um, for that long armor, and what was her name again? Rachel Dorr, very talented. Oh, here's a more detail. I think this is I think this was white fabric with pink stitching that has made this. This is all this dense stitching in here. This was not a polka dot fabric. Isn't that amazing? She basically made this polka dot design with the quilting itself. Quilted it to death. Yeah. I mean, some of these pieces, like they can almost stand up by themselves because of that dense quilting. It creates like it's almost cardboard like. It's very stiff. I think I got a few pictures of this, but you can see like what happens here with these. I mean, that's amazing. I don't I don't even know how. I couldn't even begin to tell you like the start and stop on these and how this is all done. It's really amazing. Yep, and here's another really close up of the pebbles. Pebbles are like, you know, very challenging. You want to get them all like kind of uniform in size, and you kind of make them in loops, and you kind of have to backtrack a little bit, and it's very, very like intricate work. And I think she did the same thing here with this blue. That is just created by the quilting lines themselves. There's another um, quilter that often she always has a piece in at Quiltcon, is Cassandra Beaver, and her pieces are uh, her earlier pieces were white quilts, and the quilting itself is what gave, she used colored thread, so the quilting itself is what gave the piece its look. And so they would look like plaids or striped fabrics, but it was actually the quilting that created the design. So very interesting, and that's kind of what that reminds me of. Okay, so this one, as I mentioned, this does not have any like optical illusion to it. It's not supposed to make a face or anything. um, but she's made all of these triangles, and you can see she's cut up pieces and repieced it back together. So yeah, it kind of messes with your eyes in the middle there. So let's hear what she has to say about this one. So this one's called Breaking Tradition Number 2. I suspect she made one before this. Yes, it's a series. So this was made in 2021. And she says, in my Breaking Tradition quilt series, all quilts play with a traditional pattern cut up and then repieced into a different traditional pattern. So I think this is a log cabin. So you have a piece here, you have a piece here, and then I think here. It's really hard to see. But yeah, I mean, I think you could kind of follow it around. And I mean, I think this is what she does. Ah, no, she did it as a courthouse pattern. I'm sorry. Courthouse steps. So it's this, and then these two pieces, and then these, and so on. So not log cabin. It's courthouse steps, which is similar to log cabin. It's just the order that you put the pieces in. Yeah. Yeah, it's the order that you put the pieces in, but wow. I mean, it kind of, because, okay, so the basic pattern is, I guess it's just a diamond. Let me finish reading. Okay, so she's taken a traditional pattern, cut it up, and then repieced it into a different traditional pattern. For this quilt, I botanically dyed fabric and created an alternating diamond quilt top. I then cut it up and reconstructed it into a courthouse steps pattern. The soft plant-dyed fabrics and repetitive blocks ask for quiet observation to see the secondary pattern within each piece. And so then this was machine pieced and hand quilted on a traditional frame. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. What she's got going on here. And I mean, also the idea of like cutting up your own piecing. Um, she cut up a quilt top. I've cut up several of my own quilts. Um, so yeah, I like that. I like that idea of being able to sort of deconstruct and reconstruct. Oh, and here's a close up. You can really see there's a source of light kind of flooding across this, washing it out some, but you can see the um, where she's hand dyed this, and it, what it looks like. Okay, I don't think we're gonna get to read any today. I'm running out of time here. Uh-oh, I just realized I do not see. Ah, I don't see the placard for this one. Bad cake. Well, it's lovely. I don't know what it's called. Somehow I missed the placard on this one, but you can see this quilting in it. It's, I don't know what to call it other than because it's, there's different distances between the quilted lines. So it's plaid. It's plaid quilting. But she's using, the slashed, the inserted strips. Um, I guess these are either inserted or appliqued on. Here. So it's just a really interesting abstract piece. It kind of gives me collage vibes, you know. I love this. Do we think that this is mauve? It's funny, after we read the mauve book over a quilt nerding, I walk around now and I look at modern quilts and go, is that mauve? I think this could be mauvish. It could be mauvish. Okay. This one, hopefully I've got the right. Hopefully this is the correct one. This is called Escape Room, made in 2013. And it says, follow the leader. Strip, glue, cut, watch the back, tiptoe lightly. They will find their way through stepping in your tracks. I made this quilt using a series of improvisationally placed inset strips using a technique I discovered through experimentation. So yeah, this seems to be, she's done these kind of things where she's, cut like the N, for her son's quilt. And then some of these other ones we see where she's inserted these strips. And this seems like this is the ultimate. Um, and it's interesting to kind of try and untangle it. Like, I think it's impossible to like to figure out how she built it. Um, because you see like what's on top, what's behind. This is really effective. I mean, there's just look at this whole tangle here. It's really interesting. And then, when colors cross each other, I mean, you can tell, you assume from the quilting, maybe this one's on top of this one, but, and I guess you'd really have to look at the piecing itself to figure that out too. Yeah. Oh gosh, and the quilting. I mean, the quilting follows these lines, and then in the back, it looks like it's kind of all just in one direction. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, here's a close up. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Um, so the piece pickup sticks seem to me to be like very, probably not done the same way, but it's got the same visual. These long strips that are, just coursing across the quilt. Okay, this one is called Levi's Radiograph Improv. This one was made in 2016. And she says, my old jeans and reverse shibori dyeing give an X-ray feel to this piece. So the Levi's are the jeans, and then Gives like this radiograph X-ray feel, and this would be the shibori here. And I'm not sure what she means by reverse shibori, because what happens with shibori, you're either using literally needle and thread, or you're folding the fabric, and then you dye it. You can use other objects, like you can wrap the fabric and clamp it together. You can wrap it around like a stick, um, scrunch it, and you use a lot of thread or like kind of heavy cord to wrap, and fold and do all these things. So I'm not sure what she means by reverse, um, unless it's. I mean, it does look, it's dye here. You can see the dyeing. I mean, I would think reverse shibori would be like taking the color out. I don't know. In any event, this is another really striking quilt, and look at all of this custom quilting in it. This is Rachel Dorr as well. So she says, I improvisationally pieced the dyed parts together with white denim and scraps, and Rachel Dorr masterfully added her quilting to elevate the whole. So, yeah, it seems like her earlier pieces are like really kind of a mixed bag of other people's quilting, both hand and long arm, as well as her own domestic machine quilting. And then it's as it gets closer to today is when she starts to incorporate like hand quilting over the whole thing. So I think there is a logical progression, in her quilting, from then till now. Yeah, I would say Rachel Dorr is a pretty amazing quilter. I mean, look at all this. These these different. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's interesting to me because I mean I think there's even another that 2025 piece. It was like the second piece we looked at with the exclamation points. That was somebody else as well that quilted it. And it wasn't Rachel Dorr. Um, so it's really interesting to me. Like I wonder like how does she decide which ones that she's personally going to quilt, by hand or domestic machine, and what is she going to farm out to other quilters? And I wonder if, I mean, is something as simple as like when these quilts come to fruition, what's going on in her life, and what the vision she had for the quilting, and whether she can accomplish it herself, or she needs to hand it off to someone else, or is it strictly this one needs to be machine quilted by someone else, and like she knew that. I don't know. It's interesting. And I believe this is the last one. How do I do that? Right on time. So this is Blobberella. This, I guess, is the first one. Yes. This was made in 2016. And she said, this was the first of my Blobberella series, each playing with applique blobs with small components of improvisation. And then she says it was quilted by Chrissa Withers and herself. So so machine piecing and hand applique. And then it's a joint quilting project. So how interesting is that? Where you've got these, almost like Kandinsky spirals, and then you've got these very like, I don't know, sort of decorative Zentangle kind of swirls and feathers. Very interesting. And these little pieces in here, very interesting. She's definitely worked with some really great quilters. And I mean, she herself is a really great quilter. Um, so yeah, I would say Hillary Goodwin is very versatile. She does all kinds of work. Some of it's appliqued, it's piecing, some of it's hand quilted, machine quilted, long armed, and domestic. Um, I would say she's very accomplished in what she does. And I mean, I think like I kind of said throughout this, some of these pieces are just, you know, amazing in their execution and design. And I think all of them are very successful quilts. Gosh, look at that. like just completely unquilted pieces that just, they kind of look flat. And then you've got this intricate piecing in there. Very interesting. As often as I've seen, looking at long armors, you could find YouTube videos all over the place of long armors. And you see them do these techniques. I don't know. I guess I've just, never watched it from start to finish, and I feel like in tutorials and stuff, they kind of, I mean, they show you, but then I guess there's pieces that they just maybe don't film in detail. And I guess I just like really wonder, like from start to finish, what does quilting this look like? And I guess in particular in that there were two quilters here, Hillary and Chrissa Withers. So, and that is the last one, Blobberella. So, sorry we won't get to read Elizabeth Robertson today, but we'll get to some this week because I'm missing Elizabeth Robertson and what she has to say. So I hope you enjoyed Hillary Goodwin's work. I know I did. And we had those 3 that snuck in there that were not hers, but they were nonetheless interesting to look at. Yeah, I really appreciate her work. And, thinking about quilters who have won a lot of accolades and notice, it is interesting to see like they're a full, retrospective of their work over, in her case, I think the earliest ones were 2016. So, to see that 10 years of her work and how it's changed, or I mean, really in a lot of ways stayed the same, that she just has this consistent voice in each of her pieces. So, well, with that said, I'm gonna skedaddle. Um, Oh, you are so welcome, Robin. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I race around Quiltcon because I've actually never attended Quiltcon just as an attendee. I have always either been volunteering for Quiltcon itself or volunteering for an exhibitor, a vendor. Um, so I'm usually just sort of racing around and getting pictures really fast and then looking at them later for all the details. And I like to do it with you guys. I mean, to me, that's enjoyable to, kind of flap my gums about my opinions and then it gets you guys. I mean, how do these things land for you? So I appreciate you guys being here too. So, all right. Well, on Thursday, I'm planning on looking at the G's Bend exhibit, which was also amazing. And it had some of the stuff from the 60s, from the Freedom Quilting Bee, and some of it is more recent works of descendants of some of those women. And I unfortunately didn't get to do Mary Fonza's tour because it was sold out. But I was, ran in there early to meet up with her after her tour, and I kind of eavesdropped. So, that was a really good experience. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Tomorrow night, quilt nerding, we're back. We had finished our previous book. We will not be starting the next one until April. So all of March will be various and sundry topics. I'm sure tomorrow is going to be something Quiltcon oriented. I don't know what yet. So you'll have to stop by and see if you're available tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And if I don't see you then, I hope to see you on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for my G's Bend exhibit. So take care, you guys. Have a wonderful week. Mwah! I love you bunches. Bye.